am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.
Hello there, Price of Reason here with a series review. Last week, after a chilly reception to Disney's new MCU series, She-Hulk, the company tried to deflect criticism the only way they seem to know how these days, by blaming their customers. According to Disney and their mainstream media shills, if you don't like She-Hulk attorney at law, it means that you're an ist and a phobe. Hulk star Mark Ruffalo once again demonstrated his douchiness by retweeting an article that even suggested that people who disliked the show not only disliked women, but also disliked minorities. While I find Disney's false PR narrative both preposterous and shameful, my review of episode 2 will of course remain strictly professional. So let's get to it. She-Hulk episode 2 picks up immediately where the first episode had left off. After Jennifer Walters saves the jury from Titania's courtroom attack, the media now considers her a hero. A toxic male eyewitness then calls Jennifer a decent chick that's also a Hulk, so his interviewer then names her She-Hulk, and that's how she gets her name. Next, Jennifer goes to celebrate her victory at a bar, and a few people cheer her on, but she's upset that they call her She-Hulk because it makes her feel like a derivative of the male Hulk, which of course she is, both on this show and outside of it. Anyhow, before you know it, Jennifer's nameless toxic male co-worker from episode 1 pops out of nowhere to complain about Jennifer's success. He says she only has her special powers due to nepotism. As Jennifer tries to respond, he cuts her off and tells her he needs to go hit on a hot chick on the other side of the room. Jennifer then mentions to her cheerleader paralegal friend that she didn't want to be a superhero because they're billionaires and narcissists. I can only assume she's referring to Tony Stark, who selfishly gave up his own life to save the entire planet in Avengers Endgame. Yeah, he's a terrible dude. Then, her older white male boss shows up at the bar. He asks her to change back from She-Hulk form to Jennifer Walters because he has something very important to tell her. So she changes back and then he fires her. It turns out that the judge declared a mistrial because the jury loved her too much and couldn't remain impartial. In other words, Jennifer was so awesome that a mistrial had to be declared, which makes perfect sense because that's completely how the legal system works.
Everything that guy just said is bullshit.
Anyways, she goes on some job interviews, and nobody wants to hire her because she's a freak. So she goes to a family gathering where all of her relatives act like assholes. I have to say, it was nice to see Mark Lynn Baker, best known as Cousin Larry from Perfect Strangers, on screen again, as Jennifer's father, although he was pretty much wasted here. Aside from talking trash about Hawkeye, who Disney already recently humiliated on his own show, Baker doesn't really get to do much else. Feeling down, Jennifer then goes to a bar. Again. When suddenly, Holden Holloway, the defense lawyer that convinced the judge to declare a mistrial which led to Jennifer's firing, offers her a job. Jennifer accepts his offer, but the next day when she arrives for work, Holloway tells her that she always has to be in She-Hulk form while at the office because it's good for his company's image. Otherwise, he will fire her on the spot. So she turns into She-Hulk. Just as you get this not-so-subtle feeling that she's exchanged one slippery old white boss for another, Jennifer walks by a boardroom full of white middle-aged men as they all cackle together like evil villains. Jennifer then breaks the fourth wall and tells the viewers at home that these men never had to work as hard as she did.
Bullshit.
Then she goes to her new office, where she's already hired her cheerleader paralegal friend, when a man shows up and tells her that he can show her a bathroom where she can poop. I think this was the writer's attempt at humor, even though I'm not quite sure I understood the joke. The only thing I could think about while watching this scene is that this show is actually kind of poop. Then, Jennifer goes to Holloway's office where he tells her that she needs to try and get Tim Roth, aka the Abomination, out of jail on parole. When she tells him that the Abomination once tried to kill her cousin Bruce and that she couldn't possibly represent him, Holloway threatens to fire her on the spot. Again. So she ends up taking the case, and when she visits him in jail, Tim Roth tells her that the government used him, and she becomes somewhat empathetic towards him. I have to mention that out of all the actors we've seen on screen until now during this show, Tim Roth is absolutely the best one. It's hard to believe that a guy who was in both Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction ended up on such a crappy program, but I suppose a paycheck is a paycheck. Anyhow, Jennifer then calls Bruce to tell him that she's going to represent Abomination, and Bruce doesn't seem to care because he's in outer space or something. Now, some Hulk fans may be excited that this means that there's going to be a World War Hulk storyline, like in the comics, but I suspect that this was probably just a clever way to minimize Mark Ruffalo's role moving forward due to budgetary constraints. The episode ends with Jennifer seeing on the news that Abomination has seemingly broken out of prison and participated in an underground cage fight, much like the one we saw in the rather forgettable 2021 MCU movie, Shang-Chi and the Trinkets of Honor. And that's it. That's the episode. In my review for episode 1, I had mentioned that every Disney Plus MCU show to date has had a mediocre debut episode, and then only went downhill from there. She-Hulk feels no different. While the episode was only about 20 minutes long, it still felt like uneventful filler. If I had to say something positive about the show, it's that I still think that Tatiana Maslany is a good actress, and given a good screenplay, she would have totally knocked it out of the park. Unfortunately, her character was written so poorly right out the gate in episode 1 that it's really difficult to course correct this issue because she's not especially likable or relatable unless you're a 2022 feminist activist. Story-wise, there was one big thing that especially bothered me. At the beginning of the episode, Jennifer, who was an assistant district attorney, was fired after saving people's lives in court, and this defies any type of logic. The news said people considered her a hero, and no DA in the world would fire her when the entire city is singing her praises. In fact, DAs could only dream of getting the type of wave of good PR that she was bringing. I also think that after being labeled a hero, she would have received more than one job offer, and not just a bunch of employers telling her that she's a freak. It's really weird that they just keep changing that around in order to accommodate the requirements of the script. And to Disney and Mark Ruffalo, I just want to say this. There have been plenty of shows with good, well-written female characters in recent years. She-Hulk just isn't one of them, and no matter how many millions of dollars you throw on PR campaigns attacking your own customers, nothing is going to change that. If you enjoyed my review, please let me know in the comments. Please also consider subscribing to my channel and clicking on that wonderful notification bell. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos. But I'll